On this episode of the B2B Marketing Asia podcast, I catch up with a local Singaporean entrepreneur who turned her passion for baking into a business, expanding overseas in under a year. So stay tuned. Hey, Linda, so tell me more about your new business. How did you get started?
It was unintentional. Just exactly a year ago during Christmas, it was the same time where I just thought of giving some gifts to my friends, and I've always liked to prepare something personalized. So I was digging through my recipes, which I had almost 20 years ago, and I just decided to pick one and recreate it. And so it was a discovery process where I reinvented from one of the old recipes, and I just liked the taste, and I just packaged it. And that's how it all got started, through really word of mouth. So after Christmas, people start to ask whether I'm selling them for Chinese New Year, and things just got growing from there.
So you mentioned you started with word of mouth and you've expanded since then.
I know that online social media is important. So I started shop on Facebook, was like the first step. Learning the ropes of social media marketing, and thanks to Joe, you have given wonderful tips as well. And the second step was going on to Shopee. So I think the awareness grew. Very much my business is still through word of mouth and through referral. Because as you have seen my cookies, they don't look fanciful. They just look like a plain cookie. And that's where I felt that, how do I present my cookie in a very different way? The taste and the texture is really important. And again, through sharing. So when people eat it and the taste is just unforgettable, and it becomes addictive. So my customer sent them to the US recently for her family, and they bake a lot, but they just said that this recipe is quite hard to find. Yeah, and she just shared with me that the cost of shipping, it's double the price of my cookies.
That's what I was going to say, is when logistics come into play.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. This Christmas is one of my biggest orders that I've received. And I've expanded from working with one delivery companies and now to two, because they have different business models, and because I'm doing cookies as the basic product. But I also added in brownies for Christmas season. You need to take care of it, because like brownies are more perishable. Whereas cookies are dry products. So these are things that I realized that, oh dear, I had to factor in that consideration. And also how the delivery companies handle your goods. That is also another important factor. How Shopee does delivery and how you would do it with a private courier company, it's totally different packaging. You need to ensure that you know their style of delivery, and so that your products arrive in good condition. That's something that I've learned through this Christmas.
Sounds like it's more B2C. Do you plan to expand into B2B?
So interestingly, I found out through a friend who's in coffee trading business, and he realized that the coffee is a good complement to my cookies. And that started off my thought about working with coffee distributors, the big coffee chains. And interestingly, one of the, I can't mention names, they have actually asked for my cookies too. Tasted it, but I think COVID wasn't helpful, because a lot of their branches has to be closed because no one's going back to office yet. But they have expressed interest. There's another coffee roaster company as well. And similarly, the business owners just love my cookies, and he have been, coming to me and said, how can we collaborate, and doing OEM, which is like origin equipment, like taking my cookie but branding it under their brand. All these, again, it's a different business model, which means I have to relook at my manufacturing process. I can't do it from a home base. Licensing have to come into the picture. A lot more work needs to be done. Yeah. So as much as I think that's a viable business model, but it's more complicated and needs more thinking through.
Yeah, I think that's always one of the big questions. Doesn't matter what business you're in, is how do you scale it?
So I think after this year, I have to piece together everything and identify the direction for the company. Whether do I still want to keep it in a home base, because there are perks to it. And part of the process is I enjoy the creative side of packaging my products. So I love doing customization. I love giving my customers that wow experience and something unique and different. And that's through packaging of my products. which I've experimented during this Christmas. I don't know if you can see this, like this corporate packaging. I only do it for customers and the hampers. Yeah. So if I were to commercialize it, some parts of it may be compromised, and that's something I'm not really sure I'm prepared for it. And even commercializing of my products. My biggest concern is compromising on quality, which I don't want it to happen. I'd rather keep it smaller, and then I can have control. And the customer experience is very important for me.
And to your point, I think, the personalization, having those customized packs, maybe it's a different approach for different markets. So for example, for B2C, it could be that more standard mass market, whereas when you're doing corporates, maybe they're buying a couple hundred hampers for their clients and things like that, then you can get more personalized and, like you said, have their logos or their brand colors or things like that. So it could be a combination of the two.
Yeah, totally agree.
Now, what have been some of the biggest key learnings on the growing the business side? You talked about Shopee and Facebook and word of mouth, but what are some of the things that have really worked so far?
I think what really worked, it's really ensuring every customer its experience, product quality. And I tried experimenting it to make it look fanciful on the outside, but it compromised on the taste and the texture. I would say I've decided that I'm just going to keep it that simple, but work on the packaging.
I was thinking in terms of packaging, and a brand who's done this very well is Irvin's, the salted egg fish skin. That brand has grown significantly. And it's quite surprising in this day and age that you can create something that is, fish skins are relatively newer type of cuisine, the way they've been able to package that. Yeah. And they've expanded to different flavors. So maybe that's a case of, once again, you have your flagship products, you have your cookies, you have your brownies. Maybe it's a case of expanding into different product lines, or like you said, expanding into different business models.
Yeah. I totally agree on the point that, keep having a flagship product. And just making sure it's just so good every time the customer, and even I've explored expanding on different flavors. Yeah, customers just come back with the basic flavors. And because it's just so good, I've tried R&D, adding on to new product lines, including a honey cake. But again, it's overstretched in terms of resources. So I think that's another key thing, the downside, when sometimes I thought customers wanted more variety. In fact, customers would come and ask me, can you send me your menu or your whole catalog? And when I first started, I said, I only have 2 flavors. Yeah, sometimes customers may just thought that they wanted more. And there's always this downside where I will assume, and I think that's something to review. We should always assume that customers would always need to have more, but ensuring that your flagship product is always the best, and just keep producing it to that quality.
Absolutely. And if I can draw an analogy, I was speaking to a digital marketing agency owner this morning, and so we were talking about the exact same thing. There's a lot of full service agencies that basically do everything, but it actually stretches you thin because you have to have so many resources to do that. A lot of organizations are actually cutting down on the services they're providing and focusing on maybe 1 or 2 product lines. And one thing that I've noticed is I don't see a lot of brownies here. So I think that you've taken something that is obviously very popular in the West and brought it here, but maybe put your own spin on it.
I just thought about what is the key positioning, and I think the key thing is people are always asking me, do you have less sugar? Is it less sweet? Can I ensure your cookie is not sweet? So I think that's where I like the house bakes to be positioned as something that it's less sugar, because that's also my personal preference. I don't like things that are too sweet, and that's how in the creation of brownies is the same. I've explored with different versions of it, and eventually I said the plain soft fudgy brownies with just some nuts in it would just be perfect. So again, back down to how does that ties up with your brand, and what's your value for your company?
Absolutely. And I think you brought up another good entrepreneurial lesson is build something for yourself first that you like, and then sell it to others. I think I've tried to do the same thing with my business. I try to build things that I would want as a marketer or an entrepreneur, and then I've just been able to sell it to others. And I think to your point, you've done the same thing. You've built a brownie product, which there are hundreds of variations. You built one that's less sugar because that's what you like. And so it's easier for you to sell it that way because it's ingrained in you. Even the way the packaging is done, it still matches you as a person. So I think that in itself is something that is hard to replicate. And I think that's why you have a little bit of advantage over like the mass market ones who are very, very generic and sterile in their packaging. You have some, it's got some personality to it. Like you can feel it in the flavors and in the colors and things like that. So that's something that I think is a good lesson for most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think branding is being so personalized. When I first started, I didn't really know what is called a good brand for my company even. So if I look back at my first, product, it's really different, even in terms of packaging. So it's really a small little steps along the way. I've changed my logo, packaging, and eventually I arrived at one that looks really something that I personally would, love. And I think that's how all entrepreneurs should grow as well. Yeah, it's hard to find a perfect positioning at the beginning, but I think that's how you grow along the way. And just say, there's something not right about it. And then you tweak it a little and a little. And yeah, after 12 months, we have come up with something that I can really say I'm really happy about it. And then customers will say, oh, I just love the way this is packaged. It just looks so good. So customers' feedback are so important even to help you to strengthen your branding in terms of the look and the feel and the touch of it. So I always ask my friends for feedback. So even delivery of brownies, I'll ask them, what was your experience when you received it? Because receiving it in like through Shopee, it's all packed in a carton box. But when you want to send it as a gift, you receive it in a nice bag, very nicely packed. And so that whole the recipient experience is also different. So these are a lot of small little details that you can look into. And that's how I think eventually you will decide on certain brand for your company. And then that will help you to anchor in with something more solid, and really you can feel that it's about you.
Absolutely. I think two brands that do this very well locally from the packaging point of view is TWGT. The first time I went in there, I thought it looked like a candy store. I was like, what is this place and why is it so beautifully decorated and all the canisters are, gorgeous and embroidered and stuff like that. I was quite shocked and impressed at and how they've taken something that is rather mundane in Asia. Is like tea it's everywhere. It's been drinking for thousands of years, but they've added their own spin and flavors and colors and brand to and positioning. And I think it's been one of the reasons why they've been able to grow so successfully. And also they built it into a gift giving thing. So you see it if you're visiting. I always got it for my mom to take back to her friends and things like that, or they have the airport. So I think that realization, they started one location and they realized people were giving us gifts. So they started opening the locations at the airports, which makes perfect sense because you need to gift the airport before you go home.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great example of a brand who has put a lot of emphasis on the positioning as well as the packaging. And the second brand I'm thinking about in terms of packaging or the experience when you receive it is Apple.
Yes.
I think if you receive any of their products, it still goes back to what Apple stands for. It's like the simplicity, like this clean white color, like the box is the same and they only have minimal packagings in there. And so it feels like it's a Apple product, even though it's just a box.
Absolutely agree with that. And I actually look up to Apple a lot in their packaging. Even when I look for this box online, I will always test it with samples. And even simple things like making sure that it opens up very well, it's smooth, and that touch and the feel really needs to be like a wow experience. Yeah. So I think that all these will enhance your product quality and the product value as well. And that's how the premium could be considered as well. And people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have a good advantage because working with a lot of B2B brands, we talk a lot about customer experience, but I wouldn't say they put as much emphasis as a B2C product, even though the ticket size is much smaller. Hopefully a lot of organizations will listen to this and say, okay, how can we do something similar? So even if it's inviting a guest to a webinar or an event, how can you make the event invite or that message that goes out as memorable as, like you're saying, your own packaging, you put much love and attention to it? Last question, what has been your biggest learning so far?
I would say planning for like festive period, or mainly is operation. I think that boils down to, again, volume. How do I manage the volume sales and the ad hoc sales on a month-to-month basis? So again, drawing back on my experience for this Christmas period order, I wasn't prepared. As in, I know how much time I needed to, but I, not really. It's only when you do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you'll be like, okay, it sounds manageable. And then I just keep taking orders until like last week, I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to start. And I literally work like, how many days? I was baking every day for how many? More than 12 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I really wake up at 6 a.m. I said, I got to get all the deliveries done. Yeah, that's the biggest learning curve for me. But I think it's also necessary. Because from there, I really realized what are some of the things that I could outsource for next festive period and what are the things that I can personally do it. So part of this whole planning for the operations, and because I'm one person very into the details, I would like to ensure that every product really is packaged nicely. Even my customer has hand brownies orders. I need to see to that. And I put personalized message tags but all these small little things are worth thinking about, because when I do it myself for the first time, then I would know what are the things that I think I can outsource someone to do, without errors. I can safely be assured that there'll be no errors when I outsource it. Some of the things that I just have to keep it in-house. Yeah. So that's the biggest learning. And I just realized that I need to have a centralized e-commerce site. So this is something I hope I could be successful in getting the government grant to build a e-commerce site, which was something I never thought I needed at the beginning. But as I do it, I realized that it really would be much more efficient. So planning on in the future about efficiency in operations, it's also very crucial.
Absolutely. Linda, thank you so much.